The chair would like to call to order tonight's meeting of the regular meeting of CUSD 201 Board of Education, May 12th, 2020, and roll call, please.
Mr. Rudy.
Here.
Mrs. Stromeyer.
Here.
Ms. Wilson.
Here.
Mrs. Charlton.
Here.
Mr. Armstrong.
Here.
Mrs. Coyle.
Here.
Mr. Price.
Here.
Okay, if we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the United
States of America
and
to the republic
for which
it
stands one nation,
under God,
indivisible, with
liberty and justice for all.
Kevin, thank you very much for supplying us with the flag. Appreciate it. Okay, the first item on the agenda is approval of minutes. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the April 28th, 2020 regular meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? A motion carried. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the closed session of the April 28th, 2020 regular meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Okay, Kevin, did you want to do a student staff recognition?
Sure. And normally we'd be at the auditorium today under normal circumstances, but tonight we're going to recognize two of our teachers who are retiring at the end of the school year. First, we have Laura Riley, Westmont Junior High instructional coach. Laura started her career in 1991. During Laura's 29 years of service, she has taught family and consumer science, and is currently an instructional coach. Laura also served as Westmont Teacher Association president. For many years, Laura shared her passion and love for science, and in the last few years, she has helped her colleagues to improve the craft. Laura's accomplishments included curriculum instructions master's, nationally board certification, Westmont Chamber of Commerce Educator of the Year 2013, member of the 2014-2015 NEA Science Master's Teacher Project, yearbook sponsor, presenter at both local and state conferences such as NISE, ISTA, ICIC, and IERC Research Symposium. Nationally published author, recently been named as a new columnist for Science Scope, which is the National Science Teachers Association peer-reviewed journal for middle level and junior high school science teachers, published 9 times per year. Laura will be co-authoring the column Teacher to Teacher. Laura also created a partnership with the Village of Westmont to bring the National Water Tower competition to our students, allowing them to receive scholarship money for winning at the state and national level. And each year, the board offers the retiree either a gift of a chair, or they could take the value of the chair and donate it. And Laura chose to donate her gift to the Westmont Junior High Media Center. Robin Becker, Westmont Junior High art teacher, started her career in 201 in 1989. During her 31 years of service, Robin taught art to 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students. Robin was able to share her love of art and help students to realize that all of us are budding artists. Robin's accomplishments include creating a mural for our Fine Arts Wing that will serve as a lasting reminder of her dedication to the school, serve as a team leader for the exploratory team and advocate for the Fine Arts Department, Art Club sponsor, led creative e-periods that students loved and truly showed her passion for art as basket weaving and Harry Potter wands, and a passion for art. Her passion for art was evident in her pottery, drawing, and sports work. And Robin chose to accept the chair as her gift. Congratulations to Laura and Robin.
So as we would normally do, so we would all like to say congratulations to our staff that is retiring. I just wanted to add one little thing to that, just out of the ordinary a little bit. Nick Glenn has been our school resource officer for the past 5 years, and his time as a school resource officer has ended this year. And I just wanted to say thank you to him for everything he has done for our district as well. And I am certain that Kevin will share with us our school resource officer for next year. So thank you, Nick, for everything you've done. Very, very instrumental in our snow program. So thank you for that too. Okay, then are there any public comments, Kevin?
No, we did not receive any public comment.
Okay. Then we will move to the consent agenda. Just so everybody is aware, the item of personnel recommendations is taken off the consent agenda. There isn't anything to add to that. So the chair will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended. Number 1, approval of May 2020 expenditure report, and 2, ratification of April 2020 regular payroll.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Rudy,
Yes.
Mrs. Stromeyer,
Yes.
Ms. Wilson,
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton,
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong,
Yes.
Mrs. Coyle,
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes.
Okay, motion carried. So the first item for information and discussion is proposed student handbook revisions, second reading.
And these were presented at our last meeting for a first reading, and so they're again presented today for any questions that board members may have. And then later on in the meeting, you'll be asked to approve the handbook changes for the 2020-2021 school year.
Okay, anybody have any questions?
No.
Okay, the next item is summer school 2020.
And just a quick update for our school community. Obviously, with the current stay-at-home order that we are under, and not quite sure what's going to happen as the governor releases Restore Illinois plan, and it depends on what phase we're in and how long we get to those different phases. We'll be doing our summer school remotely. Currently, the principals are modifying their original plans, and so as soon as we have the information for our parents, we'll be getting that information out and then having registration for that. But this year, summer school will be done remotely.
Any questions, comments?
Kevin, that
Okay.
was a recommendation from the ISABE, right? That we only do summer school remotely?
Correct. Correct.
Okay, anything else? Okay, thank you. Then the next item is transition planning for the 2020-2021 school year.
And similar to summer school, on May 5th, the governor released the Restore Illinois plan to safely reopen the state. And when you look at his plan, there's 5 phases, and currently we're in phase 2. And when we get to phase 5, the state is completely reopened. Phase 4 is when it indicates that schools would begin to open in phase 4. Phase 4 also allows for gatherings of 50 people or fewer. Face coverings are to be worn and social distancing. And what we don't know and what we're waiting for additional information on is what is truly meant by 50 people, because obviously our schools hold more than 50. High school and junior high, as soon as there's a passing period, you have more than 50 people in the hallways. So we're waiting for more guidance from the state, from the ISBE, exactly what that means in phase 4 and what we will be able to or not be able to do. The superintendents were on a Zoom meeting with the DuPage County Health Department, and they were not sounding very optimistic about being to phase 4 at the start of the school year. And so right now, we are planning for several different scenarios. Best case scenario is that we're at normal in-person opening with no adaptations. The next level is that we're in person, but we're looking at doing temperature checks, staff and students wearing masks, social distancing, and as a district, we're trying to figure out, okay, what does that look like for each of our schools? Then there's a possibility that a hybrid where some of the learning takes place in person, some of it is remote, and that's to help us maintain smaller class sizes and fewer students in the buildings at one time. Very in-person opening, and that's when you start looking at alternating days. So Group A of students attend on Monday, Group B on Tuesday, and then possibly split shifts. So you have students attending in the morning, some in the afternoon. And then again, with the same temperature checks, masks, social distancing. And then the other possibilities, we start the year similar to how we're closing the year, and that's with remote learning. And then between now and the start of the school year, though, enhancing that, improving upon where we're at with the remote learning. And some of the things that we've talked about, and in some aspects, the elementary might be a little bit easier to solve because we can utilize our staff and create smaller class sizes. It may mean restructuring our buildings and no longer having 2 K-5 buildings, but one building is housing, K-1, the other building 2-5, so that way we can have as many. Manning has a lot of spaces that we could use for classrooms, so we'd be able to do that possibly. The challenge becomes, obviously, with the younger children, social distancing becomes a challenge. Having them wear masks becomes a challenge. Recess, PE classes would look very different. We'd have to rethink lunch, how we serve lunch. At the junior high and the high school, again, are you looking at, a modified schedule so that you only have some of the students in the building at one time? So there's a lot of different ways we're looking at this. We're hoping to get more direction from the State Board of Ed. I'll be honest, the State Board of Ed's dragging their feet right now. And so, we're already supposed to have received information about, how to close out the year. We haven't seen that yet. And so the DuPage County, we as a county, the districts in DuPage, we may start to develop our own plan of what this looks like and how we're going to operate under these conditions. But right now, unfortunately, we have more questions than answers. And as we narrow in on where we'll be in the fall, obviously, we'll be communicating that to the board and to our parents as we move through this process.
Kevin, what would be a realistic date, like to let parents know, like the first week in August or the end of July?
I'm hoping that by July, we'd be able to have a better idea of what it's going to look like for parents. The other possibility I should also float out there is delaying the start of school. So right now, I think around August 19th, somewhere around there, we're slated to start. There's been some discussion, do you delay school starting until after Labor Day to buy more time to see where we're at with the virus? Possibly have more testing in place, some of those things. So we're hoping to get a little flexibility from the state with our calendars so that we can make changes as we need to. So those are some of the discussions that we're having.
Kevin, I have
How
a
about,
question. Can I assume that if you're, as in your email, the normal in-person opening, is that, does that coincide with stage 5 of the governor's Restore Illinois plan?
Stage 5, definitely. It would be running our schools normally. What we don't know yet is stage 4, what that looks like. because if you look at stage 4, it's groups of 50. At the same time, it's indicating that schools will start to open. So schools, we need more guidance. What does that look like? And exactly what does that mean, 50? Is that in one place? Is it okay to have more than 50 in a building? So a lot of questions what that actually will mean.
And then just one other question. So these things that you have given to us, are these, I'm very happy to hear that you're saying that the DuPage County superintendents are talking, because obviously anything we're going through, everybody's going through.
Mm-hmm.
So are these stages like the same type of things that all the schools are looking at? So this isn't just our school that has made these up, right?
Correct. Yes, all the school districts are looking at these different possibilities for the start of the school year.
Okay, thank you.
Kevin, I did have a question. I was reading today that Mayor Gunter and other area mayors have they have an organization, and this organization is pressuring the governor to remove us from the Chicago region. Apparently, this phased-in plan of his depends upon which region you're in, and they're actually trying to get the businesses open sooner, as like other regions would be, if we could get taken out of the Chicago region. Do you know anything about this? Is there any areas superintendent groups that are talking about this in any way?
Yes, we are, and that's one of the things that we're looking for as well. That our county should be looked at separately. DuPage is considered a sub-region of the region. So we're hoping to get that ability as a sub-region to make some decisions separate from what happens, for instance, with CPS, with Chicago Public Schools.
Okay.
Kevin, how much, who dictates our school calendar? Is part of it the state?
The Illinois School Code is what drives how many days you have to have, how many institute days you can have, how many school improvement days you have, and then it's the ISBE then who oversees that. We submit our calendars to the ROE, the Regional Office of Education, and they ultimately approve it and then send it on to the Illinois State Board of Ed. And so we were given some flexibility with this spring. And that's why we've been able to do some of the things we've been able to. And so we're hoping that the State Board of Ed again will allow the regional offices to have grant flexibility to the school districts, so that if we need to, for instance, if we're going to be opening the year with remote learning, we might want to have, some additional days before students start for our staff, to continue staff development and getting them ready for it, so that, it's a smooth transition for our students.
It doesn't sound like there's wiggle room there.
Pardon me?
It doesn't sound like there's a lot of wiggle room in the setting the calendar.
Not the way it's currently, not how the school code currently is,
Okay.
but the State Board of Ed can grant that flexibility.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I think this is so hard on families, especially families with 2 working parents having to juggle, and all families having to juggle. I think all students and teachers would rather be together. I did want to clarify one thing you said, Kevin. You said for the elementary schools, there might be the opportunity to have smaller class sizes. Would we have to hire staff for that, or could we just change the way we're using our existing staff?
Right, we would change the way we're using our existing staff. So right now we would utilize some of our teachers who aren't a dedicated classroom teacher. We would utilize them as a classroom teacher.
I'm assuming those would be teachers like math and reading, interventionist, et cetera.
Correct.
So we would lose those positions within the school to make them classroom teachers.
Right,
That would be the trade-off.
right.
So here's a $1 million question, literally. I can't imagine that the state is going to give us any more money to implement any of these things, right?
No, the concern is we'll actually get less money. That's the concern.
Yeah, just thought I'd ask the question. So, okay. Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, then we'll move to the next topic. This had come up in the past. Forgive me, Dana, maybe you said, somebody, we had talked about reaffirming our class size guidelines. These guidelines were set, again, guidelines were set in 2012. And so I guess the conversation is, do we still want to use the same class size guidelines going forth, just so that we can have that reiterated to our community? So whoever wants to weigh in on that.
This is posted on the website, correct?
Yes,
So if we reaffirm the class sizes, we would just be, much like we do with a policy, it would just be a revised or reviewed date on it. So it looks, instead of 2012, it would have a more current date.
sure. We can do that.
I would be in favor of it.
Does everybody want to weigh in?
Yeah, I'm in favor of reaffirming them. Obviously the current situation with the COVID-19 as a outlier, if we have to have smaller class sizes to accommodate for that in the fall, obviously we'll have to have an exception. But as a general standard, I'm in favor of reaffirming.
I am as well.
As am I.
I would like to revisit it and not reaffirm them right now. They'll still stand in the time being, but I think that we had a lot of discussions on how we were going to use buildings and staff. And I feel like we didn't get a chance to really finish those conversations before the COVID crisis happened. I'd like to finish those conversations before we make a final decision on the class.
I'm fine with just reaffirming at this time. I think we're going to have more major things to be concerned about here very soon. So I think our focus should be more on that.
Do we want to, then just hearing from everybody, do we want to reaffirm that as of today's date, as we can post it on the website saying just what you had said, Kevin, and then revisit it at a future time? Hopefully when we get past the COVID-19 situation. Does that sound fair, Dana?
I'm good with whatever the majority of the board decides.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we're addressing what you had said. So, so we will, Kevin, could you then put something up on the website then that says that we reviewed it and reaffirmed it, and then we will talk about this at a future date. Dana, again, to capture some of the discussions you were just talking about. Okay. Then the next item on, somebody say something.
Just before we move on. So Dana, are you referring to the fact that we had our board workshop, but we really didn't get as far along in there as we wanted? Is those the conversations you're referring to?
Those are other conversations I'd like to have, for sure, especially with our current economic crisis that is facing our country, and certainly our funding as a district, which I'm very concerned about. But we had started to explore with administration on how we use our buildings, how we use our staff. We had lots of information we were reviewing and reading about creatively using staff. And I just didn't want, we have to pause that conversation. It's not prudent to have that conversation right this minute. but I do feel like I want to revisit it, which I know we as board members can request it to be on the agenda in the future. So I'll do that.
I would just suggest that we give Kim an opportunity to finish her presentation that she was working her way through that night, because we never did really, and maybe sometime over the summer, we might be able to do that at a board meeting or a workshop or something. But I don't think she prepared a lot of stuff, and I don't think we really gave it the weight that it deserved.
And I think it's way more critical now than ever.
Agree.
Yeah, I want to weigh in on that too. I think, first of all, I think there's kind of two separate things here. I think we do need to finish the conversation we were having with Kim and let Kim finish her presentation on the financial situation with the district. But I think if I'm understanding what Dana's saying correctly, is actually more a part of the strategic planning process and the conversations we were having around how do we best leverage the resources of the district to meet the needs of the student population while also addressing the financial situation we're in. And a lot of conversations were coming up about class size in those discussions. And I mean, I want to be clear, when we say we're reaffirming these class size guidelines, we have all had the conversations and we've all listened to the parents and we've all seen the research. We know that getting to as small a class size as we can is the ideal situation for us. So I want to underscore my position here that I'm reaffirming where we're at with the class size guidelines, but I'm also not backing away from any of those conversations that we've had about trying to get to smaller class sizes and a better situation for all of the students, especially as we've looked at the elementary level and how we can better utilize all of the resources across our system. So I think it's kind of two separate things, Joel. There's the Kim conversation about the financials, but there's also the strategic planning, which sort of got paused as well.
Yeah, but in that mix also is the response to COVID-19, and that may force changes upon us that we were maybe talking about at some level, but it'll be at an accelerated pace. And so I guess we have to kind of brace ourselves for that, should that be an outcome of recommendations that come from the ISBE. Absolutely.
So again, we could, Dana, you did bring up a good point that this topic, as well as others, can be brought up at a future date in conjunction with all of the above, the strategic plan, financial planning, and anything that comes from whatever we're going through now. So that's absolutely something that we could add it to the yearly calendar too, as a conversation around those times. So is everyone okay with that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, the next item is summer facility project update.
Hi, this is just a quick review of the projects that we're going to be working on, and a recap of several of the meetings we've had over the last couple months. So just this summer, actually, starting in June, hopefully, unless we have delays because of COVID-19, the chiller will be replaced at the high school. And the funding for that project can be either a combination of things: working cash bonds, some O&M funds, and we have some money in our capital projects fund as well. And then, as we discussed, we have some longer time horizons that we need to look at. The building automation system at the high school is one of the next major projects we're going to be working on over the summer. It has a long lead time and will take a considerable amount of work to get the bid package ready. So Joe will be working on that, and that project we're going to use remaining working cash bond funds for that. At the junior high, we talked about the marquee sign replacement. And again, the junior high saved monies from their building budget this year, hoping to be able to get that purchased and installed before the end of June. That would come from the education fund and the junior high building budget. We may need to allow Mr. Jonak to carry those funds over to next year because there's some zoning issues with that. So it's highly unlikely that that project is going to be able to take place this year without some variances from the village. And then we've got a door replacement that was identified in the 10-year life safety survey. So that will be life safety funds or O&M. At Miller, there's plumbing repairs that need to be done. And those, the next couple items, we've got Miller and Manning, there's plumbing projects. And if you recall, the district applied for a school maintenance project grant, and we secured $50,000 of funding, but it's a matching grant. So we have to spend $100 to receive the $50. And if the projects come in a little bit less, we'll receive less money. But those are the next things that we're going to be working on. At Miller, that project is a little bit more complex. So again, Joe will be working with our architect and may need to bid out that particular project. But we have, again, we're going to use our life safety funds up first, and then O&M, and we will receive funding back from the state for the school maintenance project grant. And the same with Manning. And then at South, we still have some masonry work that was supposed to be done over the summer of 2019, and we're having some difficulty getting a mason to actually show up. So anyway, that was already budgeted for in the O&M fund. If we can't get them out here in the next 6 weeks, then that will carry over to next year. And then, after we kind of get through that, then we'll start focusing on some other projects once we see where the building automation system comes in. And then in addition to these projects, the custodial staff are busy cleaning our schools. They're prepping the gym floors, painting, and prepping for the anticipated return of students and staff. And the ground staff is obviously working on lawn and field maintenance. Does anybody have questions?
I just want to clarify that these projects were all priorities from Joe had made these projects priorities as kind of some of the most important things we could be working on in the district. Is that correct?
Correct. And we discussed these at our facility and finance committee meeting. They've also been presented to the board at previous meetings earlier this year. So like January and on. So this is a compilation of several meetings.
Kim, is Joe and his staff, and you're involved with all of these from the financial end of them, but are we taking advantage as best we can given the situation that we're in with basically empty buildings right now? And, if there's anything that can be fast tracked, as most of the contractors that are working on are considered essential and are still working, are we taking advantage of some of that timeline that we might have in front of us?
We are, obviously the chiller, we don't have to worry about, students being in the building when we have to shut down the parking lots, get the equipment up on the roof. The biggest delay is getting the equipment in and hoping there's no delays with that. Obviously the sign replacement, we're waiting on the village for, that's a process. The plumbing repairs, again, it's, we're working with the architect, and so we're kind of, relying on his availability to get some of these things done to be able to help us. So, but we are, again, with kind of the maintenance in the buildings and things like that. The custodians are working at, getting a lot of painting projects that they haven't had time to do, and just other little maintenance pieces.
Okay, any other questions or comments? No. Okay, then we'll move on to the last item is implementation of Otis student learning software. And I had asked Kevin to add this to the board meeting. And this was the public comment from last meeting. And it was basically addressed to the board. And there's some questions in there that were asked of us and such. So it's attached in BoardDocs, and so we can have a conversation about that. So I guess I have a couple of questions. I guess we'll start. So can I ask, so when we had talked about, and please correct me if I am incorrect. We had previously talked as a board about standards-based grading for the elementary schools. So are we moving to having the junior high and possibly the high school move in that same direction for next school year, or not?
Not next school year. The junior high is, junior high and the high school are working with standards, but they're not going to make a shift to a standards-based report card. The high school, because right now, colleges are still looking at grade point average and those types of that type of data. And the junior high is, they're in the process of looking at the standards and measuring the standards. And I guess Lindsay and Nadine have joined us as well, because Lindsay's been working with Otis this year. But Otis is a learning management system that is able to track student learning through formative and summative assessment, and able to provide feedback to the teacher, and then in turn feedback to the student. And so that's why I know at the elementary level they decided to use Otis this year.
So there's just a question in here about that. It's people, again, I'm only reading from what was given to us, that it was difficult and time consuming, and has the staff been surveyed on that, or parents or anybody on that, how that works?
Can I step in? Hi, welcome, or welcome me. I think the statement of it's frustrating and time consuming is absolutely accurate. We are moving for the first time at elementary to have a uniform system in which we communicate to families in a way that makes sense. And navigating any new system is challenging in that. And doing it K through 5 systematically makes it challenging. So yes, along the way, we have had both Tim, myself, Nadine, and Sandy working in our PLCs, and then through our professional development on Institute and SIP days, get constant ongoing feedback in hopes to prepare for the next time we meet together to continually help our teachers with the end goal in mind of being streamlined in how we communicate and having an approach that when it comes to the parents, over time, they will understand it on the other end as well.
And is that the same, Lindsay, you mentioned K through 5, is that the same for the junior high and senior high too as well?
The high school, they use Mastery Connect, and the junior high was at first using Mastery Connect, and it wasn't meeting their needs. And then based upon the feedback that John and Amy got from Tim and Lindsay, is why they've decided that they want to take a look at Otis for next year.
So this is just impacting the elementary schools, just to be really clear. The note that we got, the comments in the board docs, those are relative to elementary school standard-based grading and the Otis system used in elementary school.
Yeah, and then I guess part of that, the reason I was asking that was because some of this talks about implementation of Otis next year at the junior high. And that's why I was asking
Right.
the question. So, but you're saying that the teachers are going to use Otis, but at the junior high next year, based on what the elementary schools have found to be the case.
Correct.
Okay, that was basically, I don't know if anyone else has any other questions or comments about that. And I don't know, we don't comment on public comments at the meetings, but a lot of times we will get back to the person. So Kevin, were you able to respond to any of this? Or
I talked to Lindsay and Tim, and then Lindsay had a conversation with Peggy.
Okay.
I do want to make one comment before we move on.
Mhm.
One of the things I did notice in the parent comments on the survey that we did about remote learning, that I know Kevin's going to talk about in his report a little later, was there were several parents that had junior high students and elementary students, and several parents made the comment that they wish they had Otis in the junior high. So, because right now the only way to see your students' work is to sign under your student in Google Classroom, whereas Otis, as a parent, you can sign in and see all of your students' assigned work for this e-learning time. And they were hoping to see a move towards Otis for the junior high if we're going to possibly have e-learning in the fall. And again, this is just a couple parent comments, so it's not a comprehensive opinion, but I just wanted to point that out as something with this possibility of doing e-learning in the fall, another thing to consider.
Yeah, I would back that up and say I noticed a couple of parents mentioned Otis specifically, but even more parents mentioned a uniform system for their students that span many grades and schools. And so I think, Otis is one of those solutions. Now, if it's not working for the teachers, then that's obviously something that we need to address. And that is what this comment is telling us, that we need to have caution about. So, I guess Lindsay and Kevin and Nadine, how are we addressing whether or not this system is working for the teachers? If we think it could be a solution for families to sort of see all of their student work under one umbrella.
You're muted, Nadine.
Thank you for asking that question. There's a couple things at play. First of all, as Dana mentioned, in order to access your students' work at the junior high, you need to sign into each individual classroom for each individual class. Otis at this current time aggregates all of the classroom assignments so that you can see them all in one view. It's a long list sometimes. So in addition to that, it doesn't preclude a teacher from using Classroom. It just posts the assignments in a way that can be aggregated all in one place. So as Lindsay said, Otis helps streamline that communication process. It does a number of things. It's a learning management system, and it helps teachers to create assessments that are standards aligned and communicate those proficiencies to parents. It aggregates all of the assignments. It's a way for teachers to communicate and interact with their students. Because the program is so robust and has so many features, the professional development has to be strategic and intentional. So in the beginning of the school year, we were focused on creating and aligning our assessments and being able to aggregate our data based on the standards and the progression of proficiency for our students. And then remote learning kind of threw us into a whole new set of features that the program has, and that actually ended up to be a real benefit for teachers and students, and especially parents. Now, not only is it important for parents to be able to see all of those assignments in one place and streamline that material, but it also is important for resource teachers and interventionists to be able to be part of those classroom assignments and be able to see that interaction all in one place. So as the teacher indicated, it can be overwhelming, but that's kind of the function of the program. Does a lot. Now, to answer your most recent question, Laura, I think you asked it, how are we keeping track of the progress that our teachers are engaged in to learn this program? And at this current time, our instructional coach and myself are going through and teacher by teacher to find out what skills they are demonstrating in the way that they're interacting with their students in order to design an intentional professional development program to take us through to the next step. In addition to that, with regard to the junior high, they've been sort of piggybacking on to a lot of the professional development that we've been doing with the elementary teachers so that they can transition to learn this tool and learn the most important and most valuable features to not only move toward aligning their assessments and their reporting based on standards and proficiency of standards, but also be able to leverage the tool for remote learning because its features have such a tremendous benefit in terms of streamlining that communication. Lindsay, did I forget anything?
No, that was really well said. I would just add the point where I appreciate the board listening to teachers, and it gives us an opportunity to reflect because it is a very fine balance. As a teacher, I had specific tools that I loved to use in the classroom, and they were unique to maybe my grade level, and other teachers didn't use them. And we give teachers a lot of autonomy at times to do that. In a situation like COVID-19, where we are forced to really streamline on behalf of especially elementary families because parents are doing so much of the work, let's be honest, along with teachers, it's really important to find a balance. The comments that were made with, with regards to the public comment are, to me, a learning curve, very much so. That's a part of adopting anything new. But now we're in the process of really, okay, one platform makes sense, but does one platform K through 12 make sense? K looks different than every other grade. So there's all these other things now that we're balancing, and I appreciate that the board is willing to listen to all those voices and know that it would be so nice to have one system fits all. We think Otis does so many things really, really well, but we're always open to listening to our teachers too and our families. So that's something we're navigating right now so that we can utilize those 4 days and then moving forward for our planning, the best of our ability for teachers and their preparations moving forward.
John Jonak, our junior high principal, reminded me that actually it was the junior high that looked at Otis first. And they started using Otis, not every aspect that the elementary is. And so at the junior high, it's just expanding their use of Otis. It's not bringing on Otis.
Yes, it's not the name, because I was a Mastery Connect girl before I came to the elementary. It's the tool and what it provides families and their communication about how a student is doing, and communication for teachers in their PLCs. And then communication for kids and being accessible so that they can get feedback from their teachers. So those are 3 really big things we want to look at for any system that we use. And we have a system which is called Skyward, which we've looked at teachers for that as well. So there are lots of systems out there. We just want something that, like we said, that word robust, has a lot of features that we can use really well and are user-friendly to all parties involved.
I did want to make a comment about Otis, and I think e-learning kind of moving forward. I think that we've talked about e-learning as a board as far as for emergency days, and we decided not to go with that. And then holy moly, this whole world flipped on its head, right? So e-learning, while it might be happening in the fall, might also be happening in a different way forever for us. And so I think that the way that we went about e-learning was thrown together as intentionally as we could make it, but it was thrown together quickly. So our teachers didn't get the training we wanted them to have. Parents couldn't get every training that we would want them to have. As a parent, I know that the online aspect of Otis, I've heard some comments in those comments under the parent survey also about how printed materials can be really helpful to students and how Otis sometimes is hard to navigate those things. So I hope we're just always open to learning and evolving and taking that feedback from our families and making the tool even better as we continue to use it. But I think we need to just pause and acknowledge that this isn't the way any of us wanted the rollout to happen.
Yeah.
And we should all be patient with ourselves and each other.
Well, if anyone else has any questions, thank you. I think it was, this was something that was brought to the board. So now that we've had the discussion and we've had Nadine and Lindsay as to weigh in on the plans as we learn as we go. So does anybody have anything else to add? No? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, now we will move to the action items. The first one is approval of student handbook changes. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the recommended revisions to the elementary, junior high, and high school student handbooks as presented.
Moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Strohmeyer,
Yes.
Ms. Wilson,
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton,
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong,
Yes.
Mr. Price,
Yes.
Mr. Rudy,
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson. Oh, I'm sorry. Who did I miss? Mrs. Coyle, thank you.
Yes.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Okay, you got Judy?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, motion granted. The next item, Kevin, do you want to talk about that for a minute? The changes in graduation requirements for the class of 2020?
Sure. This is because of, as has already been mentioned, we're under a scenario that nobody imagined, that we didn't have much time to prepare for. Obviously, with the no harm that's been put in place in terms of student grades, this has really made it the State Board of Ed look at the 8th semester for our students, for our seniors. And so essentially what they issued an emergency rule that is suspending certain statutory graduation requirements. And so they have asked school districts then in turn to amend just for the class of 2020, the graduation requirements. And so for the, so essentially graduation will be determined on the first 7 semesters and not the 8th semester. And so we're asking the board to, just for the class of 2020, to change the graduation requirements from 22 credits to 19 credits for the students in the class of 2020.
Okay, what questions, comments? And this is throughout the whole state, right?
Correct. Every school district will be doing it.
Okay. The chair will entertain a motion to, I'm sorry, did somebody have something? I looked down.
I was wondering, Kevin, how many students is that really going to apply to for us? I mean, we normally have a pretty high graduation rate.
Right. It's very, it's actually, you're right, Gary, it's a very small number of students that are impacted by this.
Okay. Then the chair will entertain a motion to approve the recommended change in graduation requirements for the class of 2020 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Wilson,
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton,
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong,
Yes.
Mrs. Coyle,
Yes.
Mr. Price,
Yes.
Mr. Rudy,
Yes.
Mrs. Stromeyer.
Yes.
Okay, motion carried. Then the next item is approval for the authority for additional May 2020 expenditures. The chair will entertain a motion to authorize and direct the treasurer to pay any bills received in May 2020 that have been budgeted for the 2020 fiscal year as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Charlton,
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong,
Yes.
Mrs. Coyle,
Yes.
Mr. Price,
Yes.
Mr. Rudy,
Yes.
Mrs. Stromeyer,
Yes.
Ms. Wilson.
Yes.
Okay, the next item is approval of Title I school-wide waiver. Did anybody have any questions on that, or?
This is the routine approval of the Title I plan and the school-wide waivers. These are documents that we have to submit every year in order to process the grant in time for July 1st start.
Is there any concern over Title I funding and federal funding in general?
There has been no word that Title I will be cut in the short term. I think every year there's always some risk, but we've already received our letter from ISBE for our funding for next year, our expected funding for next year, which is the same as this year. It's pretty flat because our low income numbers are flat. So there's no, I have not heard anything from that department that there's any risk of losing that funding in the short term.
Okay, then hearing nothing else, the chair will entertain a motion to approve the Title I school-wide waivers for C.E. Miller, Westmont Junior High, and Westmont High Schools as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Armstrong,
Yes.
Mrs. Coyle,
Yes.
Mr. Price,
Yes.
Mr. Rudy,
Yes.
Mrs. Stromeyer,
Yes.
Ms. Wilson,
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton.
Yes. Okay, motion carried. Then the next item is approval of consolidated district plan for title grants. Did somebody want to talk about that at all, or?
This once again is just another document that we need to write up and supply the grant for the grant funding.
Okay. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the consolidated district plan for title grants as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Coyle,
Yes.
Mr. Price,
Yes.
Mr. Rudy,
Yes.
Mrs. Stromeyer,
Yes.
Ms. Wilson,
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton,
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong.
He's frozen.
Yeah, you froze, Gary. I'm assuming it's a yes.
That was a yes. Okay.
I don't know. Are you asking me? My screen was frozen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Motion carried. So Kim, are we talking about the next two things, or are we removing them?
We should talk about them quickly. We're not going to approve the next two items this evening, but I just want to make the board aware we are continuing our negotiations with both West.
Kim, hold on a minute.
Yep.
Let me just read because you know what you're talking about, but we're
Okay.
televising. So the two items that are currently on the agenda for action items are approval of amendment to Westway 2019-2020 contract and approval of amendment to Sunrise 2019 through 2020 contract. And we are going to be removing them from the action item column, right? And we're just going to have a discussion now.
Correct.
Correct. Okay, go ahead. Thanks.
Yes. So, as everyone's aware, in-person learning stopped for our district. March 13th was the last day. And so obviously we have not been transporting students since then. ISB has come out with some guidance on compensating our transportation providers and have said that the districts will be reimbursed for those costs. Many districts have already entered into these contracts, and then there's many others who are like us still negotiating the terms. Typically, we've seen that for the remainder of March and April, if bus companies did not furlough their employees, if they kept them on the payroll, a typical rate of payment would be 80% of what you would normally have paid had you been they been providing transportation, and then somewhere in between 37 and 40% if they had furloughed their employees. So for Westway, they kept their employees on the payroll for March and April. And so we would be recommending 80% reimbursement rate for those months. And then as of May 1, when the stay-at-home continued, they did furlough everyone. And so they were looking at 37% of the normal cost for the month of May. There's a couple clauses, and they're attached in the executive content that you guys can review, where they've asked for a couple changes. I've had conversations with our attorney, and we are not going to be making those changes. So I'll have a follow-up conversation with them after we finish this board meeting, so later this week. And then Sunrise provides our special education transportation. They immediately furloughed their people. They've been asking for a wide range of compensation, and I think, again, to kind of stay in the same vein as with Westway, that 37% would be an appropriate recommendation for them. I don't know that they're going to agree to that. They have so far. We're way apart. They're looking at 60%. I don't think that's reasonable. And so, if the board would like to weigh in or give me some other guidance, and again, it's been, kind of across the board what different districts have done. Some obviously have, some have said no, some have paid, 80% for the entire time. So this is kind of a hybrid of those different options. Any comments?
Kim, I know I emailed you a response to this, and
John, you're frozen.
80%. I'm sorry?
I didn't hear what you said. It froze.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have no issue with the Westway negotiation. Of course, I'd like to see it less than 80%, but they've done a nice job of keeping their staff, for the most part, employed. I have a significant reservation with Sunrise and what we do with that going forward. If they're going to furlough their workers, I don't feel like we're going to get, I just don't feel like it's anything close to 80%, let alone 40% is necessary at this point.
I am just a fan of being very conservative at this point with all of our funds. I'm very nervous about our deficit and our revenues coming in. And I think whatever we can negotiate, as little as we can negotiate, is what I would vote for.
Kim, how were they, you had said that we would get paid back. Do you mean by the state or?
Yes, we submit a transportation claim each year and we receive the money in arrears. So whatever we do for the claim this year, we'll receive whatever it's based on what we spent this year is what we'll receive for next year. So, and right now ISB is stating that, they will continue to, pay us even though they know that the buses haven't been, transporting students. We do have clauses in our contract about what that reimbursement looks like. So if ISB decides not to pay us, then we can go back after the contractor and they need to repay those monies.
Oh, I see. Thank you.
So is there any benefit to us not paying them other than it's kind of taking our cash and holding it until the state pays us back? Just to make sure I'm understanding correctly.
Yeah, there's a couple things at play there. Obviously, they're looking for that, infusion to help them continue on. Obviously there's always a risk that, these companies may go out of business because of the prolonged shutdown, and we don't know what's going to happen with the start of school. So we need to be cognizant of that. And if that happens, then, that's going to create several other issues for me and the district and trying to get things put together, to transport students. The other thing is we don't know how quickly ISB is going to, reimburse us. There's a little bit later paying this year. Obviously, there's conversations out there about what next year is going to look like. We can anticipate that the state will be paying their bills late because they have about a projected $7.2 billion additional deficit than they thought, I think was the latest thing I heard. And so we can anticipate them paying all of their bills, all the mandated categoricals late to us. And we could even go back to, when we had the, recession in 2008, where I think there were probably at least 1 year or so where we only got 2 of the 4 payments. And so we ultimately got all the payments, but they were late. So, it's really how long you could carry that, that quote liability on the books for future payment. The other thing is ISB, it's what you pay today. So ISB doesn't look at it and say, oh, you were going to pay them. It's whatever we pay in the current year. So whatever we've paid by June 30th is what we can claim in this year. I don't know that ISB would allow us to pay them after June 30th and then apply that to a future period. Does that make sense? And these are, all unprecedented, uncharted times, a lot of difficult decisions for people to be making right now.
I think if we can keep our hands, out of the ISB pocket on this and, as best we can, I think this is just responsible on our part so that the state board has funding for, other things. I don't think paying more than basic overhead operational expenses to these companies just to keep them afloat is our responsibility. I really don't believe it is.
Okay, any other comments on that topic? So that will be brought at a future board meeting then, Kim, when you have more.
Yes.
Information. Okay. Okay, the next item is the approval of amendment to,
No.
Approval of 2020-2021 transportation contract extension with Westway Coach.
So we are, have come to terms with Westway for the 2020-21 school year. And they have proposed a 2.5% increase for all categories of service. So that's for our regular routes, our athletic and field trips. And so that is a reasonable increase for next year. So we're looking to approve that this evening.
Okay, any questions, comments? All right, then the chair will entertain a motion to approve the contract extension with Westway Coach for 2020 through 2021 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Stromeyer?
Yeah.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong?
Yes.
Mrs. Coyle?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Okay, the next item is about the wireless upgrade for South and Manning. Nadine, do you want to talk about that?
I'm submitting this proposal to the board at this current time. The original plan was to take this out of the next year's budget, but due to the fact that the installation of this hardware would be disruptive to Manning and impact the cleaning of the school and getting it ready for the coming school year. In addition to the fact that the installation company for that will run the wires, they're going to offer us a discount if we get the work done before June 30th. I thought it was a more responsible decision to put this in through before we end this fiscal year. This particular purchase is covered through E-rate funds, which is a federal grant, and 50% of the cost of this project will most likely be approved to be reimbursed due to our low income count. This, in addition, the additional information, we upgraded our wireless during the period of time that we were doing construction for the junior high, the high school, and for Miller. The wireless hardware and the infrastructure for Manning and South was put off at least twice because the wiring proposals were coming in way too high. At this point in time, we're kind of in a bind because we have to get this done. It fits in within my budget. It's just part of our refresh cycle. However, in order to get reimbursement for our grant, this could every year is kind of it's an unknown in terms of whether or not E-rate is going to reimburse us for this 50%. So this is the timing of this whole project is important, and that's why it fell within this short period of time. So the wireless implementation for Manning will bring it up to the same quality as the wireless infrastructure from all the other schools, which means we'll have better coverage. This teaching and learning will be positively impacted, and so on. If you have any other questions?
Anybody have comments or questions before we move?
No.
No? Okay. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the wireless upgrade for South and Miller with CDW in the amount of $30,476 and Code Red in the amount of $9,855 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong?
Yes.
Mrs. Coyle?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mrs. Stromeyer.
Yes.
Okay, motion granted. The next item, superintendent's report.
Just one item in my report, and we've referenced this a couple of times this evening, but when we started our school year, nobody envisioned that we would be ending our school year in this manner. And I do want to first thank our school community for everything that they're doing in their homes, and then also our 201 staff, because just as we've been discussing how we were working with parents who have their families at home and they're working at home. Some of our own staff is also they have their children that they're working with, and at the same time they're providing education for our students. So definitely a difficult situation, but I think with the amount of time we had, if you remember our admin team, we were in a conference call with the ROE. Marie sat in on it. And at the end of that conference call, all the districts were on the same page that we're going to stay in school until at least spring break. The very next day, the governor announced that schools were closing starting March 17th. So it was definitely a short turnaround. Right now, we're going to be entering a transition. Friday, May 15th is the last day that new material will be presented to our students. And then the week of the 18th through 22nd is for students to get additional support if they need it, to any outstanding assignments that they have. They'll have the opportunity to complete those. Our teachers will still be monitoring students and providing additional support. And then the final week, May 26th to 29th, the state granted every school district 5 planning days. We're using 4 of those days to actually review the survey that we gave our parents, looking at that data, and then start to plan for in the event that we start the year with remote learning, or at some point in time next year we have to go to remote learning. And we're also checking with our staff what staff development they need, what support they need in order to move forward with that. As it was pointed out, if you take a look at, and I did attach the survey results, and they're in public view, so our school community can pull up those survey results as well. It's attached to my superintendent's report. And it breaks down the data just in general for all families, and then by K through 2, 3 through 5, 6 through 8, 9 through 12, the specific data. We did have over 300 families or 300 surveys completed. We have roughly 900 families in our district. So for a survey, that's pretty good response. And then some of the things that we also noted in the survey comments was, it was mentioned earlier, that consistent platform. When you have students in multiple grades, and as the parent, you're trying to support your child, and it's a little bit different for one student than another. And so that's one of the things that we're going to be working on, is having a consistent platform that makes sense. And then also, we're looking at some of the responses in terms of what % of our families struggled assisting their child, and then that workload, and was it too much, was it too little for our students, and also clarifying our expectations. So we will be using this data in the survey to plan for next year, and in the event that we need to return to remote learning. And that's my report.
Okay, then we will move to board reports. I have just one quick thing. I'd like to say good luck to all our high school students who are taking the abbreviated AP tests these days. They are extremely different from what has gone on in the past, as is everything else. I know that there's some information that's coming out regarding the year-end virtual graduations for both junior high and high school. So, from the bottom of my heart, I'd like to just say congratulations to our graduates, and particularly the 2020 high school graduates who I kind of know some of them. And it just makes me very sad that this has occurred during their time. So I did see an interesting post before that I thought was poignant, that this class was also the year after 9/11. And that's when these kids were born. And so I think I'm going to go out on a limb and say that these guys might have some stable genes, shall we say. So good luck to all of our seniors as they go forward. And they certainly worked very hard. And if you've seen the signs around town, I would say hug a senior, but can't do that. So I just like to say that. And then, Kim, I have a quick question that I know you talked about, that there's some, there's short staffed in your office, but do you have any understanding of when some of the refunds might go to the families for the sports and snowballs and whatever that might be, what might be going back to the families?
Well, we're working on that, making sure we have valid information and that those students don't have other outstanding fees that things could be applied to. So we're gathering all the data for that.
Okay. And would those be checks that would go to the families?
If they have fees, don't have other outstanding fees, right. Yes.
Okay. So a couple people asked about that. So, okay, that's all I had. Did anyone else have any board reports?
I did, Marie. I just want to piggyback on what you said. Congratulations to both. The fifth graders, the eighth graders, and the seniors all moving on. It's an important time in their life, and the seniors should know, the class of 2020, that a letter went out today from the high school about details for virtual graduation. So please, parents, go find that email and read it. There's some important information on there and something that the school's asking you to do. Please take a look at it so that you can prepare your student properly. Other than that, just congratulations to 2020.
Okay, any other board reports?
I'm just going to jump in and say, so I echo Marie and Gary's comments, but I also wanted to give a shout out to all of the really extraordinarily creative efforts that came from our families to participate in Teacher Appreciation Week. I think it was last week or the week before. The PTOs and other parent organizations just really went above and beyond to recognize the teachers and thank them for their extraordinary efforts during this time. And I just wanted to give a shout out to them because this is obviously a really challenging time for everyone. So for those groups to have put extra effort into making sure that the teachers had got some nod of appreciation and were able to connect with their students in some way was really special. So just wanted to say thank you to them. And also back to Marie and Gary's comments, congratulations to the class of 2020.
I'd also like to wish the class of 2020 congratulations. And I'd like the community to know that we did read the responses to the surveys. And some of the responses just broke my heart because they just laid it out on the line. This is what's going on. This is what I need to do. This is what I have to do. And then working on top of it, these parents have just been rock stars and just soldiered through. And it's certainly every parent that I've spoke to, they don't want to be their child's teacher. They want to be their parent. And I get it. I really get it. But they have been so adaptable and so many comments on this is really hard, but thank you for doing what you're doing. We know it's hard for the district too, as we move forward, trying to plan ahead and to make it all work. But I just think these parents have just really rallied and soldiered on, and made it. We're almost there at the finish line. And I would hope that maybe as we learn about schools reopening and the governor's plan, I would like to suggest that, perhaps we could have something if we don't have a in-person back to school, that we could offer something for the parents, because they've just kind of been thrown in and just trying to just make it work. And I think we also have to support our parents who are supporting the children. So, but other than that, I do wish the class of 2020 good luck. It's certainly been a year for them to remember.
I want to say ditto to you all, but also to ask a specific question of Kim, just to clarify the refunds. If refunds are going to be put towards outstanding fees, will parents get a notification of that? That's my only question.
Yes, we'll do that.
Okay, Kevin, are there any other public comments that?
No, there are not.
No, okay. Then, wow, this is funny to read. Future meetings and events. Memorial Day, really, who wrote this? Memorial Day, May 25th, 2020, no school. That's good. I like that, Kim. Thank you. And I know I read it before, but that's pretty funny. High school graduation, May 26, 2020. Again, it will be virtual. Not at Westmont High School, but stay tuned for information. High school parents. Same thing, junior high school graduation, May 28th, 2020, virtual. Again, you will be getting information from your school too. And then the last official day of school, May 29th, 2020. And the next school board meeting will be June 16th, 2020 at 6 o'clock. And well, maybe it'll be at South School, maybe it'll be via Zoom again, and we will keep everybody updated on that. So, do we have anything else to do in closed session, or can we adjourn the meeting?
We can adjourn. We're all set.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. The chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.